All right, everyone, so we're back here at the lake. We get started off with a pretty nice looking hand within the first orbit when I look down at the King, Queen, Jack 10 double suited in middle position in a straddled pot. Folds to the player to my right who makes it 40. You can certainly make the case to raise here, but I just call, and late position player calls as well. We're going three ways to a flop. Flop comes out Jack 7-4 with two clubs. The early position player continues with the aggression and pots it. And over to myself. Now with the top pair, queen high flush draw, some backdoor draws as well. You certainly can make the case to call here, but I do have a player behind me, and these non-nut flush draws are typically pretty troublesome. So I take the more conservative approach and fold, and the late position player makes the call. So they end up going heads up to a turn, which brings the 8 of clubs. The original raiser checks. The late position player now bets 200. The player to my right tells me he flopped a set and actually turned a straight, but doesn't have any clubs. So he ends up getting out of the way. So we don't know what happened here, but the late position player is a pretty solid player. So, pretty likely that I was beat here, but on to the next. Within a couple orbits of the previous hand, I look down at the 8-8-4-4 single suited on the button. There's an early position limp. Middle position player makes it 25. One call to me, I make the call, and there are two calls behind. So we're going 5 ways to a flop. The flop comes down queen 4-3 with two hearts. When action checks to me, I bet 100, and we get two callers. So we're going 3 ways to a turn. The turn brings a queen of spades. When action checks to me once again, with an under 1 SPR, only one move to make, I put everything in the middle, and folds to the player to my right who thinks a little while, but ends up tossing his cards into the muck. So we take this one down, and happy to get a nice pot here in the early going. Within a couple orbits of the previous hand, now about an hour into the session, I look down at the Queen 10-7 single suited in middle position. We go to flops of Queen 9-6 with two hearts and 10-4 deuce rainbow. When action checks to the player to my right, he bets the full pot of 180. And some people would make the case to just flat call here and invite some other players along, but even with the hand as strong as mine, it's definitely still vulnerable to a lot of turn cards. So I just put everything in the middle, folds over to the button who has the table covered. He makes the call, and back over to the player to my right who calls all in for less. So we're going 3 ways to a couple runouts. The turns bring a 9 of diamonds on the top, 6 of diamonds on the bottom. The rivers bring a jack of diamonds on top and 10 of spades on the bottom. So it looks to be a great run out for us on both boards. I turn it over, and both my opponents end up mucking. So with the antes, we get a near triple up, and we're off to a good start here in the early going. All right, everyone. So just a quick reminder that myself, Josh, and some special guests are going to be featured on the inaugural PLO Mix live stream. That'll be right here on YouTube on the brand new Venetian Poker Live channel. That'll be Friday, March 28th from 5 to 10 p.m. local Vegas time. We're going to be playing the same games we play during our meetup games, which are, of course, PLO, Big O, PLO double board bomb pots, along with the small blind jackpot. But instead of it being a 5-5, we bumped it up to a 10-10 with a 1 to 5K buy-in. And to give everyone some insight, the amount of views we get on this is going to directly determine how many more of these streams we get. So if you can not only please watch yourself, but share this with as many of your friends and family as possible, that will really go a long way in us continuing to grow these non-2-card games. We are unfortunately full on the main lineup, but we are going to have a must-move game. So if you want to get onto that, please let me know. Also, the next day, we're going to have the 5-5 meetup game from 2 to 10 p.m. So again, if you want to get on the list for that, let me know. And I appreciate all your support and hope to see you guys on the stream. And let's get back to the video. Within a couple orbits of the previous hand, I look down at the beautiful Ace, King, Queen, Jack double suited in middle position in a straddled pot. When it folds to me, I make it 30, and there are 4 callers. So we're going 5 ways to a flop. The flop comes out Queen 4 deuce rainbow. When action checks to me, I bet 55, and we get 3 callers. So we're going 4 ways to a turn. As the dealer's burning, I'm thinking of a card in my head, and the dealer puts out the 10 of hearts. So a perfect card for us. When action checks me once again, this card is going to give a lot of other people inferior draws, inferior straight draws, and flush draws. So I want to charge people the maximum and even potentially get somebody to fold or have to make a tough decision that made 2 pair. So I bet the full pot, fold over to the button who calls all in for less, and everyone else gets out of the way. So we're going heads up to a river. The river puts out the 7 of hearts, so we make the nuts. I turn it over, of course, knowing we're good, and my opponent looks pretty disgusted by it and takes a little while before tossing his card into the muck. So another pot for us here, and we're off to a really good start. I go card dead for a while. This hand is about 3 hours into the session when I look down at the Ace Queen 10-7 double suited under the gun. I make it 20. There are 4 callers over to the big blind, who then makes it 125. I make the call and 2 callers behind, so we're going 4 ways to a flop. The flop comes out Jack, Jack 10 with 2 clubs. Action checks to me, I check, and action checks through all the way to the river after the turn brings an 8 of hearts and river brings a 7 of spades. The big blind ends up leading for 300. I fold all the way to the button, who makes the call. He turns over pocket 7s. The big blind ends up turning over the king, queen, jack 10 for the flopped full house, and he's going to take this one down. In orbit after the previous hand, I look down at the ace, queen, 10, 3 double suited in middle position in a straddled pot. When it folds to me, I make it 30, and there are 2 callers, so we're going 3 ways to a flop. The flop comes out ace, king, 3 with 2 clubs, so we flop the royal flush draw. When action checks to me, I bet 65, and only the button makes the call, so we're going heads up to a turn. We do not make the royal, but we make the nut flush with the 4 of clubs. I think about a sizing, and I bet 225, as I want to be able to get all of my opponent's chips by the river, and he thinks a bit and makes the call, so we're going heads up still to a river. The river brings an 8 of clubs, so pretty good card for me, as obviously now it's going to make it look less likely that I have a flush, and I'm potentially just betting a blocker. I ponder a bit, but I know that I'm going to bet the entire stack, which my opponent has about 400 left, so that's what I do, and he doesn't waste too much time before making the call. I turn it over, obviously knowing we're good, and he ends up turning over the queen, 9, 5, 3, so he actually had one out to a straight flush with a deuce, but luckily it didn't come, and we're going to get a very nice pot here. We go card dead for a while. This hand is about 5 hours into the session when I look down at the ace, king, 7, 4 double suited in middle position in a straddled pot. Under the gun makes it 40. I call, and there are 2 callers behind, so we're going 4 ways to a flop. The flop comes out 9, 3 deuce, all spades. When action checks to me, I decide to check back. This will disguise my hand and help me get some value on later streets. Also, if I have some opponents in early positions slow playing the nut flush, it kind of protects a little bit against that. So kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone there. And both my opponents behind check as well, so we're still going 4 ways to a turn. The turn brings a queen of hearts. This time the big blind bets 60. And I don't want to announce the strength of my hand just yet, so I just call, and that brings along the big blind as well. So we're going 3 ways to a river. The river brings a 10 of diamonds. This time the big blind checks. Over to me, in thinking about a sizing, I settle on 135, hoping to get a crying call from a lower flush or possibly even a straight. But unfortunately, both my opponents fold, so we don't get any additional value, but happy to take down another pot here. An hour after the previous hand, about 6 hours into the session, I look down at the queen, jack, 10, 5 double suited on the button in a straddled pot. Middle position makes it 40. I call, and the straddler makes the call as well. So we're going 3 ways to a flop. The flop comes out pretty good for us in 9, 8, 7 rainbow. When it checks to me, I bet 60, and both of my opponents call. So we're still going 3 ways to a turn. The turn brings a 6 of spades, now putting a one-liner on the board as well as bringing a backdoor flush draw in. And when both my opponents check to me one more time, I bet 235 and we get 1 caller. So we're going heads up to a river. The river brings another 8 and my opponent doesn't act right away. And at this point, I'm pretty sure I know what's coming. And he thinks a bit and puts everything in the middle, as I presumed. And I don't know this opponent that well, but in thinking about my decision, I usually tend to think that most people don't bluff on the river in low stakes PLO, but this particular player is actually playing props with another player at their table. So they're playing Baccarat on the flop and also red or black. And it seems like they're betting a pretty good amount of money. So that leads me to believe that this player likes to mix it up. Obviously, if he's betting a good amount of money just on props. So that leads me to make the call, and my opponent ends up turning over the queen 10 8 3. So he had just the 10 high straight. He did have backdoor spades, but bricked it out and used the trips as a blocker bet, and we're going to take this one down. What's up, guys? Wayne back here with you. So today I was in for 465, out for 29.15, so profit of 24.50. If you haven't seen the previous video, I'll go ahead and link it up here, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.